Yorkshire has long been at the heart of the country's energy supply. For more than 200 years, the Yorkshire coalfield was a key resource. It drove the Industrial Revolution and powered British transport, manufacturing and domestic heating for much of the 20th century. At the turn of the millennium, coal was still dominant in the electricity generation sector, with much of the UK's electricity supply being generated in the large-scale power stations built by the Central Electricity Generating Board in the 1960s and 70s. In Yorkshire, 3 of these power stations tower above the landscape in the Lower Aire Valley: Ferrybridge, Eggborough and Drax. Together with Thorpe Marsh Power Station near Doncaster in the 1980s, Yorkshire power stations were capable of delivering up to a third of the nation's electricity. The 1990s saw a steady decline of coal in the UK, mainly as a result of the so-called dash for gas, which could provide cheaper, more efficient and cleaner power generation. This was accompanied by an increase in imported coal and the closure of most of the UK's pits. In 2015, the last remaining deep coal mine in the UK at Kellingley in North Yorkshire announced closure. Later in the year, both Eggborough and Ferrybridge power stations announced closure for 2016. The phasing out of coal-fired electricity generation has long been anticipated. Legislation and policy concerning emissions control, including strict limits on sulphur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, as well as targets for CO2 reduction, have made this inevitable. So what is going to fill the gap left behind by the demise of coal? One part of the answer is to be found at Drax, one of the large-scale power stations which looks to remain operational for the foreseeable future. Drax has implemented a series of projects which have allowed them to replace coal with biomass as a fuel. Biomass which is renewable, sustainable, which can satisfy emissions limits imposed on coal. I talked to Andy Koss, CEO at Drax, about their operations.
What is the current status of operations at Drax with regards to the biomass power generation?
Okay, so we have 6 units at Drax. They all formerly ran on coal. We now have 3 units running broadly on biomass. So we have the first unit was converted in April 2013, running fully on biomass. The second unit October 14, and the third unit is running predominantly on biomass and has been doing so since July.
So in terms of current power generation solely from biomass, what power output are we seeing from Drax at the moment?
Well, broadly half the plant is now running on biomass.
So it's almost 2 gigawatts of
That's right, 2 gigawatts of biomass, yes.
And 2 gigawatts of what is classed as renewable energy. How does that fit in relative terms to the overall UK renewable energy power generation?
Yeah, so in 2014, as the latest set of numbers that we have, Drax alone was contributing 12% of all renewable electricity. So this is the largest renewable plant in the UK.
So it's a very significant project with regards to the reaching the UK's renewable energy targets.
Absolutely. I mean, we would expect to hit 12% of the UK's target in 2020 as well. So when our third unit is running flat out.
Okay, so we're 12% of what's currently being generated, but also in future it will be 12% of that, the actual target by 2020.
Absolutely. 2014 we only had 2 units running.
Yeah.
When we have 3 units running by 2020, this plant alone will be 12%. So very difficult, if not impossible, for the UK to meet its targets without Drax.
Yeah.
Drax expects to be delivering renewable power for at least another decade. I asked Andy Koss what other longer-term plans there are for the business.
So we have 3 parts to the business. We have a pellet producing business in the US, we have a generation business here, and we also have a supply business at Haven. So we're looking at the market as a whole. The electricity market is changing very fast. we're looking right across the piece from sourcing upstream through generation down to supply to see where the opportunities are. I've no doubt that this power plant will be producing power beyond 2027. How much we don't know, but we're looking at all the options available to see how we can keep growing the group and keep running a viable business here.
While Drax has been successful at converting to biomass, this has been made viable through UK government incentives for investment in renewables. However, the UK government support for such technology has not been clear or reliable, and other power stations have failed to gain suitable contracts and have opted to close. Meanwhile, new build, smaller scale biomass power stations have been developed. In 2014, E.ON commissioned a 30 megawatt waste wood plant at Blackburn Meadows in Sheffield. A new waste recycling and energy recovery facility in Leeds is being developed by Veolia, and which will deliver 11 megawatts of electrical power. On the site of Ferrybridge Power Station, a 68 megawatt multi-fuel facility has been built, using waste wood and other biomass as fuel. Although considerably smaller than Drax, together these smaller installations provide a not insignificant contribution. Aside from biomass, the other significant renewable energy technology being deployed in Yorkshire is large-scale wind power. Onshore wind farms have been a familiar sight in the Yorkshire Pennines near Penistone for many years. In recent years, though, the technology has developed with larger and more cost-effective turbines being installed in projects often exceeding 20 megawatts in total capacity. Many installations of this size are now operational around Yorkshire, including Penny Hill near Rotherham, Sixpenny Wood, Rusholme, Ghoulfields and Tweenbridge, all in the Humber Head area, and Lisset and Hall Farm towards the East Yorkshire coast. While none of these is as large as the many plus 100 megawatt installations in Scotland, Yorkshire has over 300 megawatts of operational onshore wind power. While the large onshore wind farms are not inconsiderable, offshore wind farms can be more than 10 times the capacity. Offshore installations near the Yorkshire coast include the 210 megawatt Westermost Rough project and the 219 megawatt Humber Gateway wind farm. Even larger projects are planned in future, with a 2 gigawatt installation called Craik Beck off the Scarborough coast and a 9 gigawatt installation on Dogger Bank. Two projects in development in 2016 are the 400 megawatt Dudgeon and the 500 megawatt Race Bank wind farms off the Lincolnshire coast. Siemens Wind Power are leaders in wind turbine technology and are involved in these projects. They're in the process of creating a manufacturing and assembly plant in Hull. I talked to Ross Dean, a project director for Siemens, about the project.
So hello Ross, first of all can you tell us where are we and what is Siemens doing here?
Okay, firstly welcome to Alexandra Dock. This is the site where Siemens is investing its £310 million. The site itself is about 540,000 square metres, and just to put that in context, that's about 70 football pitches. What you see behind me is the last of around 4,000 piles which will form the foundation of our blade factory, 40,000 square metre blade factory which we will build here on this site. Beyond the blade factory we are currently piling out in the River Humber a brand new 650 metre quay, and that quayside, once infilled, will be purpose built for our pre-assembly operations here in Hull, and will then receive our current generation of installation vessels where we will load the components out and take them off to their offshore locations for final installation and commissioning.
Back in the project office, I talked to Ross about what would be happening once the factory was built.
So production is anticipated to commence in...
Yeah, start of production is currently anticipated to commence 1st of September 2016. That's where we'll lay our first mould. Obviously the production process is a long one, so our first, if you like, full hull blade coming off will come later on in 2016. And we from there expect to ramp up production to capacity over the following months after that.
And of course, this operation is founded on the development of large offshore wind generation
Yes.
Along the North Sea coast and elsewhere in the UK. Can you give us a short overview of what are the first projects which are likely to be up and running, involving Siemens?
Okay. Well, Siemens has obviously been a large player in the market to date. I mean, we've currently got around 3.8 gigawatt of installed Siemens turbines. The total installed base in offshore around the UK at the moment is about 5 gigawatts. So we have a significant market share. That capacity is due to double it by 2020 to around 10 gigawatt. And in terms of the longer term planning, that's set to increase to more like 30 gigawatt. So there's a significant market there. In terms of which projects will be the first to come out of Hull, from a pre-assembly perspective, that's carrying out the execution and loadout of the partial installation on the harbour side. It's currently planned for the Dudgeon wind farm, which is off the east coast of the UK. Following that will be the Racebank project, is also we've announced as being the following project after Dudgeon, and it will be the Racebank project that will start to receive some of the blades that are coming off the manufacturing line in late 16, early 17. The turbines that we're currently marketing and selling into the market are the D6 and D7. That's the 6 megawatt turbine, which we've currently installed recently in westernmost Rough, which is off the coast of Bridlington. And those are the turbines that are currently going into the Dudgeon and Racebank projects. But we've recently announced the upgrade of our 6 megawatt machine to a 7 megawatt machine, and that's being sold out into the market now as well. And the blades we'll make here in Hull, the 75 metre blades, will accommodate, will sit well on those products.
And you mentioned the Westernmost Rough
Yes.
project. What experiences has Siemens learned from that? I mean, it's a big installation. You can maybe just explain how big it is. But what issues and problems have you learned from that for future installations, if any?
Yeah, well, there's been a number of lessons. Firstly, it's our first large commercial wind farm that includes our new 6 megawatt direct drive technology. We'd done a number of smaller test turbines, both onshore and offshore, but this was our first large commercial scale. So we've learned a lot of lessons in terms of how we install and how logistically manage a bigger turbine. The rotor diameter is 154 meters. We're dealing with 75 meter blades. We're dealing with components that are in the hundreds of tons. So the logistical challenges offshore that we faced have taught us an awful lot. So as we go now in the future into mass rollout of this product, those lessons that we've learned on the Westernmost Rough project and continue to learn in projects thereafter will prove vital importance.
Thank you.
Despite the demise of coal in power generation, it is clear that Yorkshire has already moved on and is providing a significant part of the UK's renewable power. Yorkshire is well on the way to maintaining its role as literally the northern powerhouse of England. This is good news for the next generation of engineers in the region, who are needed to design, manufacture, install and operate electricity generation plant well into the future.